The night was already collapsing when the truth arrived, folded inside a napkin, damp with spilled water and quiet panic. I had come expecting awkward smiles and polite disappointment, maybe a forgettable dinner I could laugh about later, but instead I felt my chest tighten as if the restaurant itself had leaned closer to whisper a warning. Nothing prepares you for the moment when a stranger's handwriting tells you that the person across the table is not who you think they are, and that whatever you believe about this night is about to shatter. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small act can change an entire life, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this live because people like you believe they matter. My name is Andrew Walker, and I had sworn I was done with dating apps after my divorce scraped the last bit of optimism out of me. But loneliness has a way of reopening doors you thought you had nailed shut. I worked as a building inspector in Columbus, Ohio, a job built on rules and measurements, and my life had become just as measured and quiet. My sister Rebecca insisted I try one more time, and when she sent me a profile match through a friend of a friend, I agreed mostly out of exhaustion rather than hope. The woman's name was Grace Miller, and her photos showed calm eyes and a smile that looked practiced but sincere. She said she worked in nonprofit fundraising, loved old movies, and believed people deserved patience. I believed her because I needed to. The restaurant sat just off High Street, warm lights glowing through fogged windows, the kind of place that promised comfort even if it delivered none. Grace arrived on time, dressed simply, her posture careful as if she had learned not to take up too much space in the world. There was nothing immediately wrong, nothing that screamed danger or deception. Yet something about her felt rehearsed, like an actor who knew the lines but not the meaning. I dismissed the thought as nerves. We talked about work, about childhood winters, about how life never turned out quite the way we expected. She laughed at the right moments, nodded at the right places, but her eyes drifted often, scanning the room as if searching for exits. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Hannah with tired kindness etched into her face, refilled our water glasses more often than necessary. Each time she passed our table, her gaze lingered on Grace with a mix of concern and urgency that unsettled me. I wondered if Grace was a regular, if maybe she owed money or had caused trouble before. When Hannah brushed past again, she slipped something onto the table so quickly I barely noticed until Grace stiffened. The napkin rested near my hand, folded small, innocent, and heavy all at once. I opened it out of reflex, expecting a phone number or an apology. Instead, a sentence stared back at me, written in shaky blue ink, telling me that the woman sitting with me was not who I thought she was and that I should be careful. The room didn't spin, but my certainty did. My heart pounded against my ribs as I looked up at Grace, whose face had drained of color. She didn't ask what it said. She already knew. Suspicion is a poison that spreads fast. Every word Grace had spoken replayed in my mind, now twisted, now suspect. I thought of my divorce, of the betrayal that had taught me how quickly trust could rot. Part of me wanted to stand up and leave, to protect myself the way I hadn't before. Another part, quieter and more stubborn, noticed the way Grace's hands trembled, the way shame hunched her shoulders forward as if she were bracing for impact. The truth didn't come easily or cleanly. It arrived in fragments, in pauses heavy with regret. Grace had not been honest about her life, not because she wanted to manipulate me, but because she was afraid of vanishing if she told the whole story. Her real name was Sarah Thompson, and the nonprofit job was a half-truth built on volunteer work she did when she could. The rest of her life had been swallowed by caring for a younger brother with severe disabilities after their parents died in a highway accident in Indiana. Medical debt had crushed her, eviction notices had chased her across state lines, and desperation had pushed her into choices she was not proud of. She had borrowed identities to get work, lied on applications to survive, and built a fragile mask that might collapse at any moment. Hannah, the waitress, was not a villain or a meddler. She was a woman who recognized fear because she had lived it herself. Years ago, she had escaped an abusive marriage and learned to read the signs of someone cornered by circumstance. She had overheard Grace's whispered phone call in the restroom earlier, heard the cracks in her voice, and understood that secrets like these could explode if left alone. The note was not meant to accuse, but to warn, to give me the chance to choose with open eyes rather than illusions. I sat there, the napkin still warm in my palm, feeling the weight of a decision I hadn't expected to make. Walking away would have been easy and justified. Staying meant stepping into complexity, into risk, into a story that could end in disappointment. But something about Grace's exhaustion, about the way she seemed smaller than the burdens she carried, cracked open a place in me that had been sealed since my divorce. I saw not a con artist, but a woman drowning quietly, waving with one last breath. The night did not magically fix anything. We didn't become heroes or saints. What changed was smaller and more fragile. We stayed. We talked until the restaurant closed and the chairs were stacked on tables around us. We spoke about fear and pride and the lies people tell when the truth feels unaffordable. Grace cried without trying to hide it, and I didn't feel the urge to run. I felt present, grounded in a moment that mattered. Over the weeks that followed, life tested that decision relentlessly. Grace's legal troubles surfaced, and the risk of her losing custody of her brother loomed like a storm cloud. I accompanied her to social service offices in Cleveland, sat in waiting rooms that smelled of old paper and despair, and watched her fight with a courage sharpened by love. It wasn't romantic in the cinematic sense. It was paperwork, anxiety, and late nights spent searching for resources. But somewhere in that grind, trust began to grow, not as a blind leap, but as a deliberate choice renewed every day. Hannah checked in occasionally, offering quiet encouragement and homemade soup when exhaustion won. My sister Rebecca met Grace with skepticism that softened into respect. Slowly, painfully, Grace rebuilt her life without borrowed names. She found legitimate work with a church-affiliated charity that valued her experience rather than judging her past. Her brother, Michael, learned to smile at the sound of my voice, and those small smiles became victories I carried into my own healing. Love did not arrive like fireworks. It came like dawn, almost unnoticed until suddenly everything was visible again. I learned that trust is not about perfection, but about accountability and grace. Grace learned that she didn't have to disappear to deserve help. We both learned that sometimes a disaster is only a disaster because we refuse to look past the wreckage.